week. It's usually our Thursday night free and open to the public Bitcoin programming. But given the conference, the Bitcoin Investor Week, last night we had the opening party. Tonight we're very, very excited to have Larry Lepard here to discuss his work, his new book. Tomorrow night, we're actually hosting the American Legion. We're Outpost 0917. It's the first outpost in 19 years to get approval. They call PubKey home, which I'm very excited about. They're hosting a private dinner, but after that at 9 p.m. we have Adam Back, the CIO at Blockstream. I'm blanking on his name, I apologize. As well as myself and a third guest. Oh, Max from Hodl Hodl and Debify are going to be here. We'll talk about lending in the Bitcoin space. Don't sell your Bitcoin, just borrow against it, I suppose. It'll be a great chat. And then on Thursday, we're hosting Senator Lummis, which we're also very excited about. That's a private fundraiser here in the back, but the bar will be open. Everybody is welcome to come and hang out at the bar. She's going to do, you know, the Bitcoin payment thing that President Trump did here, so we're very excited for that as well. If you can make it, you're always welcome. And let's kick it off. We got Larry Lepard. As always, tavern chat. Interrupt. If you don't know a term of art or what we're talking about, feel free to raise your hand, ask questions. We'll have a mic going around in the back. But yeah, let's kick it off.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, it's an honor to be here. I love being with Bitcoiners because Bitcoiners are my people. Yeah, Bitcoiners are my people. The other cool thing that really happened here is I got a picture with Bitcoin Sign Guy, which is just, like, to me, that's going to be one of my favorite selfies. The fact that Christian is a part owner, hangs out here, went to Colgate, which is where I went. It's all good shit. So, yeah, I wrote a book. The book is a tool for all of us to use, I hope, because if we want to make the world a better place, we got to get it on a Bitcoin standard. We all pretty much know that. The world doesn't know it. A very small percentage of the world knows it. So we're like the early Christians, right? And we got to convert the world over to the sound money religion. And I wrote the book because I was looking at the world and I was watching blue and red argue over shit. And the metaphor I've used recently in podcasts, I say that the house was on fire and they were arguing about the color of the drapes. It's kind of like, guys, the fucking house is on fire. Let's figure out how to put the fire out. And the fire is obviously the fact that mathematically they've got to keep printing money to keep this debt-based structure going. And as Jeff points out, that's a conflict. We live in a deflationary technology world. We've got an inflationary monetary system. Something's going to break. And so, and I look around the country and I just think most people are getting hurt, really badly hurt by inflation. Top 1% owns 90% of the wealth. The middle class that I grew up in has gone away. And frankly, a lot of people in this country are hurting because they go to the grocery store and it's damn hard just to afford food. So, to me, in my mind, it's a pressing issue. I looked around. There are a lot of good books out there. We all know them. Safe is the standard, literally the Bitcoin standard, and the best book on the topic. But I've given it to friends, and they bog down. They don't read the whole thing. So I thought, well, maybe if somebody told a story and made it more kind of entertaining and maybe a little bit more edgy, we could get more people to read it. So I wrote an edgy story about Bitcoin and put it in the form of a book.
So this is awesome. We have a lot to dive into. Can we take a step back a little bit? So Colgate, they were the Red Riders at one point, I think.
Red Raiders. Yeah.
Red Raiders, and what is it now? Just the Raiders.
Yeah.
All right. And then you went to HBS, and then
right.
what was the career trajectory, the fire hose version of what got you to the big print?
Yeah. Okay. I'll jump through it quickly, but. So I always liked figuring shit out. That was kind of my highest and best use. I'm a frustrated engineer. Probably could have been an engineer. And so to me, in business, engineering was kind of investing, figuring things out. You had to analyze stuff and so forth. So I kind of knew at a young age I wanted to be an investor. Thought Warren Buffett was really cool back then before he became a fiat asshole. And so I went to I went to Wall Street and worked there for a couple of years, and I saw how corrupt that was. It was really pretty bad. I went back to HBS and studied investing, and then I got into the venture capital business because I knew that technology was changing the world, and I thought it was a good place to be. And I could see that the technology was going to grow. I was right about that. That worked out pretty well. And so from 83 to 2004 or 5, I was a technology investor in venture capital, and it all worked. And then, had a couple greedy Harvard MBAs working for me. They wanted half the firm. The people who would invest in us wanted us to put a lot more money into .coms. We knew it was overvalued. And so I walked away from it and just started managing my own money. And then '08 happened, and '08 was really kind of a seminal moment for me. It's one of those things where just like your whole life changed, and because the response to the global financial crisis just blew my fucking mind. I mean, they took the cost of capital down to zero. They printed trillions of dollars. I mean, this was just like such an enormous and large distortion of capitalism that I was like, I can't believe they're doing this. And the implications are obviously going to be inflationary, and they have been, but not in the way I originally thought. And so I pivoted, and I opened a fund focused on investing in gold and silver mining companies, because the last period of inflation we had in the United States was in the 70s. And in the 70s, the two best performing stock categories were oil and gas and gold and silver mining. And so I thought, okay, if we're going to have inflation, because these guys are mispricing capital, I got to get into that. So, I started in the gold and silver mining space, and I've been in that space since that time, and with a lot of ups and downs and some real travails and punches in the face. But, gold still is sound money, and it's still, this mining fund will eventually work. It's worked, but it's, like I say, it's had a lot of ups and downs. And eventually I'll exit that, because Bitcoin's a much better form of gold. And so while I don't shit on people who hold gold, and gold is appropriate for people who can't stand Bitcoin's volatility, it's, as you know, it's vastly underperformed gold, and that'll continue. And ultimately Bitcoin will flip gold, but that's going to take years. It's not tomorrow. And with this next round of inflation, I fully expect gold to go to 5,000 or 10,000. Bitcoin will go to 1 million. They're both good numbers. It's just that Bitcoin's going to go up a lot higher, faster. So that was kind of the background, how I got here.
That's great. So what was the tipping point that caused you to have to write this book? Was there a specific moment? Was it a confluence of events?
Yeah, it was. I think I mentioned a little bit in the beginning. Just watching the country tear itself apart, and blue red, and the visceral, just the disgusting behavior on both sides, by the way. And I clearly lean red. But on both sides, the extremes of both sides, and I was just like, this is just insane. There's no middle ground, there's no discussion, and there's really no focus on what's the important issue, which is this monetary system that's broken. And so it was just an awareness, and I felt like I kind of got a tap on the shoulder. Somebody saw me on Twitter, a ghostwriter. She called me and said, "You should write a book." I was like, I don't know what maybe not. And then she said something that just got inside of me, and I just couldn't get rid of it. And she said, Larry, books can change the world. And I was kind of like, oh, fuck. Why did you say that? Right. And I thought, I'm kind of perfectly suited to this, because I'm 67. I've been a monetary sound money guy forever. I've seen all the prior bullshit. I mean, I had a conversation with a great young Bitcoiner at some other conference, and I said, well, you remember when LTCM blew up, and I didn't realize how young he was. And he says, I wasn't born. And I remember all the nonsense that's happened from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the way, getting rid of Glass-Steagall, all the crap that's brought us to this momentous time here where we're right on the edge of the can can't get kicked anymore, right? We're right at the edge of the end. Now, whether it happens this year or whether it happens in 6 years in 2030, it's happening. We're there, because, sovereign debt is failing. We see it. In sovereign debt terms, gold is up 200% since 2020. Bitcoin is up 2,000% since 2020. Both of these are in the book. The money is failing. It's Lynn's book. The money is broken, and it's failing. And we've got 330 million Americans, and most of them have no clue that that's what's going on. And so I thought to myself, somebody's got to write a book to explain this. Now, whether or not they'll read it, that all depends on if we can get it to go viral, if you give it to your friends, if people like it. There are a million factors. I can't control that. But I wrote the best book I could in 7 months, and I pray that it gets out there and spreads around, right?
Yeah. They're scary. Yeah, absolutely. Historically, really scary times. So When Money Dies, fantastic book about Weimar Germany and inflation. If we put it to practice, what I think a lot of people here believe, a return to sound money is critical. What does that look like operationally for the government? Can they ever get there? Individuals have a roadmap that they can follow, and is it even possible to avoid just the absolute calamity that
Yeah,
these
that's-
things usually are?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Thomas, and the book deals with this a lot. And you know, I mean, I don't want to go all mandibles on you guys, right? Some of you have read that. And
We have that in the shrine.
Yeah, right. So we know how bad it could conceivably be. There are lots of paths from here to sound money, and they don't all have to be incredibly ugly. There will be winners and losers. Long-term bondholders, they're going to lose. There's just no way. We cannot meet those commitments with money that's worth what they think they're owed. So that long-term bondholders, they're the sucker at the table. Beyond that, you know, they could do a monetary reset. We can evolve to a sound money system. I mean, we could slow down. You know, if Doge were extremely successful, which frankly I don't think it will be. I think it'll be somewhat successful, but not extremely. The problem is too far gone. I mean, there are paths that are not horrific, but one thing I'm pretty confident of is almost every path involves inflation. And that's just the simple math. The simple math is the GDP for 53 years has grown at 4%. The debt for 53 years has grown at 8%. The gap is getting larger and larger, and every time it gets too large, we have a crisis, like 2008 or 2020, and they have to do another big print. The title of the book is The Big Print. There's another one coming. We've had two big prints. We had one in 2020. We had one in 2008. There's a bigger one coming, in my opinion. So, you know, but the transition, the book talks about that. I mean, there's a chapter called Policy Responses where I write the speech that an imaginary president might give, which basically says Keynes was wrong. We should eliminate capital gains taxes on gold, silver, and Bitcoin, and we should return to a sound money standard. But you know, to think that this is going to be smooth, if you've read When Money Dies, I mean, one of the tail event possible bad outcomes is hyperinflation. If the government, I mean, let's say Team Red's not successful, and in 4 years we get Team Blue, and so now Stephanie Kelton is the Treasury Secretary. Right. And Andrew Yang is the president, and we have universal basic income for everybody, and we all get stimmy checks on CBDCs, and I mean, money fails when people realize you can never stop printing money. They will never stop. I mean, I've realized they will never stop printing money. I think most of the people in this room have a pretty good sense that that's true as well. The whole country doesn't know that yet. But if
it's intoxicating. Politicians will use that tool if it benefits them in the short term.
And by the way, it's the only tool they have. I mean, it's like, you know, they got a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? They're going to print. So we know that. We just don't know when, how much, et cetera. And it's hard. I mean, playing the ups and downs and the vicissitudes, it's not simple. I mean, you know, I had friends who bought it at 60 or 70, and then SBF blows up, it goes to 15, you know, and I'm begging them not to sell it, and they sold it. You know, so I mean, this is not. You know, if you go look at the Murmachan chart on Weimar, have you seen this chart? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. I mean, you get a lot of volatility in these monetary events, and so this is not for the faint-hearted. You know, you want to make it to the other side with your wealth intact. You know, guess what? You got to be prepared to see it at 106, and then a month later it's at 88. And you're like, whatever. You know, no big fucking deal. I don't care. It's a buying opportunity, right? So.
A really scary accelerant or amplifier to an event like that, the hyperinflationary event, would be, you know, coupling it with the wealth inequality, which you talk a lot about as well. Seems like we already checked that box to a certain extent in the country.
For sure. I mean, you know, 1% of the country owns 92% of the wealth. And by the way, if Team Red wins, we're going to see higher taxes. I mean, we've got the lowest tax rate, you know, in the history of this country. And, you know, a lot of people don't realize this, but you know, even pre-Reagan dropping taxes, I mean, the marginal tax rate at the top used to be in the 60, 70, 80% range. And, you know, I mean, the way AOC and Bernie Sanders think we solve this problem is they think we can tax the billionaires and that'll solve it. Now, the math doesn't work, and that doesn't solve it, and that only makes things worse. But, you know, I mean, sadly, when things are broken like they are and you're going through a fourth turning like we're going through, I think the populace might just keep flipping back and forth from Team Red to Team Blue. I mean, I hope to God Trump makes things better and continues, and you know, Vance wins after him, and you know, this side prevails. But let's say it doesn't. Let's say he puts in these tariffs. Let's say they're highly inflationary. Let's say the stock market breaks, so all the boomers they're all in stocks. All my friends are so heavy into stocks, it's unbelievable, and that's very dangerous. I mean, the stock market is incredibly overvalued, more overvalued than 29. So they all get hit really hard, you know, and they're screaming bloody murder, and guess what? Team Blue wins. And you know, we got a whole different set of problems to deal with. So it's going to be messy. I mean, sadly, it's going to be messy. But the positive side in the book, it talks about this. The optimistic side is all the good stuff that's happening, the decentralization, the fact that we don't have to listen to CNN anymore, that we can listen to Tucker and that we can listen to Rogan, the fact that we can get on the internet and try and find the truth so that we don't have to realize that ivermectin, is bad. It's actually quite good, and it solves the problem. I mean, all the lies that and they've been just so blatant on the other side that we've been told, that's all getting stripped away. And so, there's a lot of good news. And I remain very hopeful that on the other side of this, America will be a great place to be, and we'll have a rebirth. But I think you're right. I mean, there's no doubt there's going to be trouble here. There's going to be tumult.
Yeah, it looks like there's been such a obliteration of the Democratic Party right now, and there's a bit of a void. What comes out of that void could be really scary, right? If you think about real economic, global collapses, a war, something like that, that typically leads to whatever a party is in power doesn't necessarily win. It flips to the next one. So a continuation of the pendulum is definitely, cause for concern. This is a gloomy one. I have a lot more questions, but I want to pause because we covered a ton of ground really quickly. I'm sure there's some great questions that we want to start to lob in there. Yeah. There we go. Up front here.
I'm sure you explain in the book how sound money will fix the problem. But how do you, I don't know if you talk about this in the book, but how do you convince people that sound money will fix the problem?
Well, the book will help because it'll show all the corruption that the unsound money has spurned. I mean, that's the first half of the book is designed to get people pissed off. Like you read it and they're like, holy shit. You mean to tell me we lent $220 million to John Mack's wife in the GFC, at 0% interest rates, non-recourse? What the fuck, right? So, I mean, so part of it is you get people pissed off enough and you get enough of them pissed off. The other is they experience serious pain. And that's sad, but guess what? If the currency collapses, people are going to understand that sound money is the issue, right? I mean, you can't hide a currency collapse. I mean, if we have a currency collapse or we have really high rates of inflation, people are going to be hurt. I mean, we already have really high rates of inflation. I'm talking about even higher. Right now, people are already pissed off. And look at the price of eggs. I bought hamburger the other day, just 2 half-pound patties, high quality, admittedly, because I like to eat good stuff, $11, right? $11 for a friggin' pound of hamburger. Come on. It's friggin' nuts.
We're in New York City, I just want to say.
What, is it more expensive here? Is it really?
Well, we do what we can.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Back over here. Yeah.
You mentioned this being the lowest time for tax in history, and my wallet didn't understand that. Could you explain? I didn't realize that taxes had changed as a result of this.
Well, Trump brought in tax cuts originally, and they were set to expire and go back higher, and he's going to renew them. I think if you look at a capital gains tax and general average interest rate, or average income tax rates right now, I mean, pre-Reagan, who was the beginning of kind of the trickle-down, cut taxes, grow the economy revolution, taxes were much higher. I mean, the highest marginal rate was 70%, as I remember, and throughout from the 30s all the way into the 70s, they're just much higher tax rates. And my sense is that with the anger on the blue team and the unfairness in incomes and equality, that's coming back. I think that's coming back now. I mean, they talk about trying to tax on unrealized capital. I don't know how they're going to do that. They can't ask what you own and ask what you're gaining. I mean, that's not going to work. And so, one way to protect yourself against taxes is to try and get as many things you can in assets that you're not going to sell, so that your wealth goes up, and then if you need money, you borrow against the asset rather than sell to pay the tax, right? Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
So to that question, and you talked about the wealth gap. That question, I don't know how old you are, but taxes are lower. Just that's a flat. You're dead on, Reagan. But is the inflation then taking that back out? So that you're like, wait a minute. It says I'm only paying 35 or 28%, but my cost of living is just through the roof, and I'm.
Well, yeah, no, that's right. I mean, the tax we don't see obviously is inflation, right? I mean, it's yeah. I mean, I think
healthcare, education, the important stuff.
Yeah, and you add on property taxes. I mean, you can't deduct those anymore against your federal. I mean, they just keep Reagan. I mean, Obamacare. I mean, I was stunned. I mean, I had a family of 5, self-employed or small firm employers. And I mean, my health care before Obamacare, I think I was paying $1,200 a month, $1,500 a month. Good plan, Blue Cross. I mean, you know, my kids are moved away, and I'm now on Medicare. Actually, I'm a recipient of all this shit. But you know, it was like $3,500 a month, approaching $4,000 a month, and that was, and of course, originally it was, you know, a $10 deductible and a copay on a few things, and by the time I was done, it was a $75 deductible for every visit, and you know, there was a $10,000. The first $10,000 was my nickel. So I was, you know, paying $40-some-odd thousand for catastrophic insurance in case I had a heart attack, and then I had to pay the first $10,000 out of pocket, which I never generally spent. And then every time I went to the doctor, I had to pay another $75. And I mean, it's nuts. I mean, we all see it. The money's failing, and that's really that's at the core of the problems in society. And I mean, to this point, I took this book and I mailed it to Trump, I mailed it to Vance, I mailed it to Vivek, I mailed it to Vicent, I mailed it to Loomis. I'm gonna go with Dennis Porter. We're gonna walk through Washington D.C., give it to every single congressman and senator, because this is, and that's why, you know, I ask you. I mean, look, I'll make money if I buy the book, but not much. It's surprising how slim it is. But I ask you, you know, buy the damn book and pass it out. We got to spread the word. I mean, we got to make this into a mass movement where, you know, other people understand. And the way they do that, the way, you know, movies go viral, anything goes viral, is friends just recommend it to friends. Say, hey, you got to read this. This guy kind of lays out why we're getting screwed. You know, read it. I mean, that's what we got to do. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, for the people that are not like deep into Bitcoin or Web3, can you explain in your manner what sound money is? Yeah,
sure. Sound money is money that cannot be debased or cannot be easily debased, and money is always a ledger, but as Lynn Alden said it best, okay, gold is money as a ledger that is managed by geology, right, the Earth's crust, okay. Fiat is money as a ledger that's managed by a government. Bitcoin is money as a ledger that's managed by by an unmovable computer algorithm with 21 million coins. And so sound money is money that cannot be politically diluted. I mean, and there's dilution in all, there has been, until Bitcoin, and that's why Bitcoin's so significant. Until Bitcoin came along, there was dilution in all forms of money, even gold. The supply of gold grows at 1.7% a year. That means in 55 years, the amount of gold on the planet doubles. Okay, so we've always had money that was had dilution, but gold was always the one with the lowest dilution because fiat's grown at about 7% a year. So gold was the best alternative before Bitcoin came along. When Bitcoin came along, they actually solved this problem. We now, and this is really big, and when historians look back on this, they're gonna note this. We now had a form of money that could not be diluted. It's like, whoa, that just didn't exist before, right, Mark? I mean, it did not exist before, which is why this thing's performing differently than everything else. It's performing so, I mean, it's what makes this situation so unique. And a lot of people, they want to put the old models on it, but the old models don't really apply because it's a new technology, totally different. It's like, it'd be like trying to explain air flight to somebody, I mean, okay, birds can fly, but humans can't. But then we flew, and suddenly you get it, and it's totally different, right? That's kind of what we're talking about here. It's a technical innovation that changes all the money rules. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Can you articulate the relationship between the value of, say, gold, and if it were to go up, how, because there is more of it, more people come into the market, restabilizes the price, but how Bitcoin, that can't happen, and essentially the only thing that can move is the price.
Right.
Can you drill down into that concept a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, Jim. I mean, and so this is the only commodity in the world that is perfectly price inelastic. Every other commodity in the world, if your price goes up, we'll find more of it by definition because you'll do the marginal thing. Price of oil goes to 200, we'll drill everything we can. Price of gold goes to 10,000. There are mines that could be open to be very economic at that price. So the supply will go up. Price of corn goes up, we'll plant more fields of corn. Price of Bitcoin goes up, doesn't matter. There's a set issuance schedule. That's the uniqueness of the whole thing. And so we've never had anything like this before. It's a new form of money. And the sooner people get their arms around that and accept that, the sooner they'll start living on a Bitcoin standard, and they'll be like all of us, which is feeling kind of comfortable and happy that we're not going to get fucked by the government in the next 30 years. And everybody else is, you know. So, did that address it, Jim?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. Sign guy. This guy, we have a true rock star in our presence. I mean, I have more respect for Christian than your average Bitcoiner.
Colgate Bitcoin.
Yeah, right.
Was not really.
What's not to like?
All our professors were, neo-Keynesians.
Oh yeah,
so
bad, really bad.
We made it through.
Yeah.
So, do you have any specific views on free banking, and to the extent that it would be the financial model of a sound money economy? And then, as a follow-up to that, I guess the primary check and balance in such a system is adverse clearing. So, of what you've seen of the state of Bitcoin withdrawals from centralized exchanges and now ETFs, what trends do you see which might characterize your view one way or the other there?
It's a great question. When you say free banking, you're talking about banking with full reserve banking without fractional reserve?
Well, it could be fractional reserve,
okay.
but it's free issue banknotes, just the way, say, BlackRock Bitcoin is not equivalent to Coinbase Bitcoin, et cetera.
Right. Well, and I think one of the things you're alluding to there is the possibility of the threat of paper Bitcoin, right? Exactly. Yeah, and as a gold guy and having watched the gold market for years, I mean, they've manipulated the gold market for 50 years since we were off the gold standard, and there's a lot of paper gold, and in fact, that's kind of arguably coming home to roost right now as we see all this gold moving from the London Bullion Exchange over to the COMEX, and
is there any in Fort Knox?
Yeah, right. Well, there's that too, and they're making statements like, well, yeah, it's hard to move and it's heavy and there are a lot of lorries in the street, so we're going to be a little slow. I mean, did you read that? Well, then I was like, I was like, you got to be kidding me, right? I mean, you can't make this shit up. So, yeah, I think there is a risk of paper Bitcoin. I think there's already a little bit of it. I mean, Sam Bankman-Fried had paper Bitcoin. He had people who thought they owned Bitcoin. He didn't own the underlying coins. And I think that, the book calls for this. The governments in the world really need to ban financial derivatives of all types. And they really need to remove the backstop of the banks that the Federal Reserve and the FDIC provide. Because what the bankers have done, the way they get away with all this, is they've kind of got a gun to our head, and they're like, look, we control your financial system, and if you let us fail, the ATMs aren't going to work, and everything's going to be horrible. So every time they get themselves in a pinch, just like, this, and by the way, the Fed grew out of the panic of 1907 when Morgan saved the whole country. Every time they get in a pinch, they're like, great, you got to bail us out. What does that mean? Print money. And so, and that print money, what that is, that's a hidden tax on every single hardworking person who's been saving for their whole career, and they just paid for the bailout of that bank. I mean, you're hearing stuff that 1 in 1,000 people in this country understand. But to those who've studied the financial system, you can just see it as clear as day, that the money has been printed to save the banks over and over again. So back to the banking example, in the book I call for this, banks should be like any other business. If they fail, they fail. And there will be bankers who will say, guess what? We're going to do fractional reserve, but we're always going to keep 70% reserves, and we're only going to borrow, and their profitability won't be as high, but people will use them because they trust them, versus these other banks who have no reserves. But they're at risk of failure. If you want to get a higher rate of interest in that bank, fine, be my guest. But the problem is, if they fail, you're not getting bailed out, at least not in the new system. And so the government and the banks have to stop colluding at the cost of all the people, because the original premise of this country was, all men are, and they didn't say women, but they meant women too. All men and women are created equal. And, guess what? They're not. Bankers aren't equal. Government people aren't equal. They got a different deal. They got a special deal because of the way the system's constructed. I'm not really sure I answered your question, though. Do you want to follow up on that?
Sure. I guess the specific question is, of what you see today with withdrawals, say after events like FTX, or even just with price volatility, there's certain patterns of withdrawals. Does that inspire confidence that there is a check against, you could call it excessive fractionalization?
I think it does. I mean, I think it does. I mean, there's no bailout in the Bitcoin world that I can see. I mean, I think, and Caitlin says this, and I believe her, that she thinks one of these ETFs or banks or whatever is going to get out over their skis. They're going to use some leverage in this thing, and it's going to move against them, and they're going to be, and that's it. They're going to, boom, they'll be gone. And I don't think the government's going to bail them out, and they're going to be forced liquidated. So, yeah, I mean, in an asset that can go up, 5x in 12 months, and an asset that can also, lose 70% of its value on a drawdown, boy, you got to be careful. I mean, and by the way, that also leads to something I haven't said in a lot of settings, but I think it's very important to understand. In the 1800s, this country financed its growth with equity, not debt. Debt is a more recent thing, and people figured out how to bring consumption forward using debt, and then that would create growth, and they thought growth was a good thing, so they kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And in this new world where we have sound money, you won't want to borrow as much because you're actually paying back with money that's going up in value. And so it's a kind of a different set of equations, and so I think companies will tend to finance themselves more with equity. People will tend to save more money and not waste money on stupid shit. I mean, I think part of the reason why a lot of the stuff that gets done in this world gets done is because people are they're hopeless, and they figure, well, what the hell, I might as well enjoy myself. I might as well buy this alcohol and get drunk, or I might as well play this lottery even though I know the odds suck, because they got no other way to improve their life. What if you knew that every dollar you saved would be $10 and $100 in the future? Guess what? You'd learn how to save dollars. And that would be a really, it's a long time preference, right? That would be a really beneficial thing for society because, all the old ancient maxims of, don't eat your seed corn and save money and for product, to have a more productive future. Those things, people would understand that, and we would have a more productive future. We'd all live a much higher standard of living. I mean, our standard of living has been significantly impacted by the fact that we've misallocated capital for the last 50 years. And it's allowed us to do stupid things with money. The biggest of which I point to in the books, $8 trillion in the Middle East, so that we could secure, Iraq in order to give oil, now sell oil to the Chinese because that's where most of the Iraqi oil goes today, or, grab Afghanistan only to give it back. So it's kind of like, why did we spend this $8 billion again, or $8 trillion again? I mean, it's just, and if the government had come to us and said, oh, we're going to tax you so we can go do all this shit, they'd have a revolution. I mean, everyone said, well, what the hell? There's no way, I'm not paying that tax. Why are we doing this? But they didn't. They just said, we're going to do it. We're going to spend money we don't have. And, guess what? Your food costs more, right? So that's kind of how it works. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. So we understand the issues with CBDCs, and I think everyone in this room is anti-CBDCs. Yeah. But stable coins have been so far, I think, the most innovative technology apart from Bitcoin. Right? There's actual many use cases, and it's used worldwide. What's your view on stable coins and leaning towards a digital dollar project, because we don't want a CBDC for dollars?
I don't have a problem with stable coins per se. I mean, all stable coins are doing is really allowing the kind of the technology and Bitcoin rails and crypto rails to move money quickly and easily. I mean, it's just better than the FedWire or better than, some of the SWIFT, right? So stable coins per se are not a problem. Now, they are tied to the underlying value of the dollar, and that's going to be a problem because someday the dollar's going to lose all its value or a lot of its value. But arguably, even in the shorter term, stablecoins are a positive thing because the stablecoin issuers are using those proceeds to buy treasury bills, and the amounts now are small. But guess what? We got a lot of treasury bills to roll over. We got to roll over, what is it, 6 trillion, 7 trillion? Yeah, that's a big number this year. So, there's been an argument that Besant and Trump and others, Lutnick, et cetera, would really like to see if the size of the Bitcoin market were to go up a lot, then there'd be more money to be invested in stable bills. That would be a bid for the U.S. government debt, and that's Saylor's whole argument. Well, why don't we sell the gold, buy the Bitcoin? The Bitcoin will go up so much in value that the debt will seem like a small number. Now, that's all true. The problem with that is eventually that'll just kill the dollar, and that's why the government probably won't do it. But
the DOJ got into Tether, I think 2017, 2018, big investigations, and folks like Bitfinex and some of the Tether truthers were out there saying that this was the beginning of the end. And it kind of just went quiet, right? And nothing ever came of it, and there was no real announcement. There were no charges against them, and they continued. And now they're one of the most profitable companies, by employee. I think they have 12 employees. And I think in the background there are two things. It's the bridge to dollarization, right? It's getting dollars into economies like China, some countries in South America, where the dollar actually has penetration and is much more effective for people to hold. The U.S. likes that, A. And the other one here, I do think that the soaking up of treasuries just becomes increasingly difficult, even if it's considered small in a macro sense now. It'd be a real nightmare to unwind. So sort of just leave it alone and let it keep doing its thing. Also in the background, there's a huge fight between Tether and Circle and Coinbase with USDC, and wanting to keep them out of the U.S. And that was a big issue for Howard Lutnick when he was, in the running for Treasury Secretary. Very complicated, going to be crazy.
They want Circle to win, and they don't like Tether. Is the bottom line. Right?
I think they like Tether. I just think they want it to stay, offshore. I think they like the bifurcation a bit.
Yeah.
Hey, Lawrence. In your book, you talked about shorting housing pre-08, which they made illegal and changed the rules.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll see more of that or similar different things like that going forward?
It's entirely possible. I mean, I think less so maybe under Trump, but I think Team Blue, like everything will be on the table. I mean, I really fear a Team Blue win at some point in the future, and they say, we had a pretty good thing going here with this fiat currency, and these gold and Bitcoin guys, they've messed it up. They're bad people. They're even anti-American. And we need to tax Bitcoin at 90%. We need to tax gold at 90%. Maybe we need to even do a 6102 and grab this shit. And it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to do because they could call up BlackRock and Fidelity and all the ETFs and say, give them cash, send us the Bitcoin, right? I worry about that. I mean, I worry about a change in the political stripe of the country, and that occurring, which then of course argues for self-custody, and argues for a second passport because. This is a worldwide phenomena, and there'll be countries that'll be, friendly to Bitcoin, and maybe the U.S. won't be one of them. And I never would think about leaving this place unless that kind of stuff happened. But if that happened, I might think about leaving this place. So, I think we all have to be aware of it. One other point I'd like to make that I think everybody really needs to focus on or understand, because it's in the book too, and it's an important point. What I'm encountering now when I talk to friends about buying Bitcoin is they're saying, well, yeah, you got it at 10,400 or 2,000, 20,000, I bought a lot at lower numbers, and they're like, how can I pay 100,000? You already paid, you got it so much cheaper. And I answer with two metaphors. I say, one, okay, the financial system is the Titanic. I bought a lifeboat at 400. I bought some more at 10,000. I bought some at 20,000. I bought some at 40,000. It's 100,000 to you. Do you want a seat or not? Your call, okay? Right? And now, it may not really be the Titanic, but, that's the thing I use. The other one I use is I say, look, this is Jesse Meyer's chart in the book, $900 trillion of what we consider to be financial investment assets, if you include real estate, okay? 900 trillion. Bitcoin is 2 trillion. 0.2% of all the financial assets in the world. So, Bitcoin could go up 10x. It could go from 100,000 a coin to 1 million a coin, and we'd still only be 2% of all the this is for the best form of money ever devised by mankind. Really? You think you're late at 100,000? I mean, give me a break. In 20 years, people are going to look at you. You have a whole coin? Oh my God, a whole coin's worth $6 million. You bought something at 100,000. I mean, they're going to look at us the way I look at Max, right? I sit with Max. I'm like, fucking hey, dude, you were buying it $1 or $2. And he says, yeah, but Trace got some at 50 cents. I mean, everybody thinks they overpay for Bitcoin. Everybody. It's just the nature of the beast. And this is the beauty of compounding in an asset class that is going to go up forever, Laura. I mean, that's the beauty of it all. And it's hard for traditional people to wrap their head around it, but I try to. Those are the arguments that I use when that objection comes up. Go ahead. There's one way in the back here. Yeah.
Sure. If Bitcoin is digital gold and gold is analog gold, how come they trade completely differently, and should we expect that to change?
Well, they don't trade completely differently. My observation has been that gold tends to lead Bitcoin. The gold market is bigger, more distributed, and it smells monetary debasement earlier. And if you go back and you look at the runs in the price of both of them, gold usually moves first. And then Bitcoin moves second, but harder, right? And so Bitcoin is going up faster than gold because it's got two things. They both are going up because of monetary debasement, right? The dollar can be printed, Bitcoin, gold can't be printed. Okay. the reason Bitcoin's going up so much faster than gold is gold has been around for 5,000 years. Everyone who wants to own gold already owns it. They know it. It's established. Bitcoin's got an adoption curve. It's like a mobile phone thing where people are kind of like, whoa, shit, this is really great. So we got more and more people coming into a fixed supply. You know, it's even better than mobile phones because they could make more mobile phones. I mean, you're not making any more of this shit. I mean, it's just like, and that's what's driving Bitcoin so much harder than gold. But they tend to be correlated on the upside. I mean, they're very much tied to monetary debasement. And by the way, on the downside too, I mean, I was holding both in March of 2020 when COVID hit. They both got hit hard. I mean, and coming out of that hole, gold came out first, and it came out harder. And I remember a lot of my Bitcoin friends saying, God damn, gold's working and Bitcoin's not. Why not? Why not? And I said, just wait. It's coming. And then remember, and then Bitcoin caught a bid, and it went, you know, man, it just raced past gold, right? So it's, they're correlated, but not perfectly. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
True or false? I've heard this in the past. Some people have said that under a sound or hard money regime, the welfare state is impossible.
Yeah, I haven't thought a lot about that. I mean, I think, certainly people will be very aware of their taxes and so forth. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know the answer. I mean, I think libertarians would probably lean away. I think under a sound money standard, libertarians will be economic winners. I think economic winners often tend to go into government to try and get back. I think then they're likely to try and dismantle the welfare state. One thing I do think about a hard money standard, right now the whole damn country feels like a money grab to me. Everywhere I go, everything I do, I feel like it's a money grab. You know, the veterinarian, the dentist, you name it, anywhere. And if pharmaceuticals, you name it. And if we have a sound money system and people don't feel so put upon and so scared about inflation, it makes them a lot easier to be charitable and to help other people. And so I think it would be, I think you would find a lot more, kind of kindness and just general, natural charity. I mean, I think most people want to just get along, raise their kids, treat others fairly, be treated fairly. And, I look at all the political, debate and all the problems in the country. There are a lot of angry people in the country, and I get it. I get why they're angry. Their lives are tough and getting tougher, and they don't understand why. And when your life is tough and you're working a lot of jobs just to put money on the table, you're not really thinking about how to help other people. You're just worried about taking care of yourself, right?
Yeah, I think sovereign individual touches on this. When it goes into more like localized communities and when the state shrinks, you go back to these structures like churches, effectively, like focusing on local communities. And the good or the intention of the welfare state remains, but the mechanism to deploy that or who's responsible for that is not this overarching structure on a federal level. It's hyper-local, if that makes sense.
Yeah. One thing, I don't know how much longer we're going to go, but one thing I just want to say. So we got some books up here. I tried to get them from Amazon. So Amazon, it costs $7 to print a book. They mark it up by 1. They'll sell them to me for 8, okay? So I said, okay, give me 100 books and ship them to New York. They said, fine, 60 to 90-day delivery, right? I was like, what? I said, what if I pay full price? Oh, they'll be there in 3 days. Right? So somehow, maybe when there's profit involved, they figure out a way to get them here. When there's not, they don't. So I paid full price for these books, and I don't, I'm charitable, but not that charitable. So anybody who wants a book, I'm selling them. We've got Venmo, PayPal, Sats, whatever, and I'm happy to assign them, to your name and write whatever you like. I tend to put the block height on right above my signature. So, I just say that as kind of a background. And I don't know, we can keep going on questions if you want, but I don't want to bore everyone to death. I mean,
why don't we do 2 more questions, and then I have one last one that I'd like to finish on. Yes. Yeah. If that's okay with you.
That's fine. Yeah, no, I'll do whatever you guys want to do. That's the other thing, I'm going to hang around, so anyone who wants to get their book signed, I will get to you. I will sign it. Obviously, there'll probably be a little bit of a backlog in the early going here, but I'll stay as long as it takes to sign the books. So. Yeah, right, exactly.
We got time.
Yeah, we got time.
Tip your bartenders.
Yeah.
What's your take on the sovereign wealth fund that the Trump administration?
Yeah, well,
what do you see happening the next 3 years? 3 or 4 years?
Oh yeah, it's just a guess.
Are they going to buy Trump and Melania with it?
Oh God, yeah, right. Well, and how about Malay doing his Libra? I mean, it's just these people are just born to break your heart. And the crypto people, it's tricky, right? Because let's face it, the fact that crypto people were supportive of Trump helped. I mean, and I'm not a crypto guy. I think they're all shit coins. I mean, maybe there'll be a use case in a few of them, but not many. And I think it's a bad space to be in. I think it's hurt us a lot. But you know, they brought some votes and they've donated money, and that's why it's the National Crypto Reserve, not the National Bitcoin Reserve. And so, you know, I'll hold my nose and be okay with that. Hopefully we have the 210,000 coins. There was a report on Twitter that said they might have lost the keys. God, I pray that's not true. I hope that was just.
They just put that out there because of Fort Knox. They're trying to take the wind out of that story.
My personal belief is the U.S. government will not sell the 210,000 coins it has, and they will actually start buying coins. I don't know if they'll get the Loomis bill through. You know, 1 million coins over 5 years, that's pretty aggressive. What I've heard is it's going to be tough. But it would not surprise me to see them stacking coins. Jason Lowery, who wrote a great book on this whole issue of sovereign strength as a result of wealth, has told me and others that the CIA, the Pentagon, and the military understand the importance of Bitcoin. They get it. They want, I mean, in fact, they even get it to the point where they realize that if we stack Bitcoin and China's stacking gold, China's going to lose because Bitcoin's better than gold. So I think there's a good chance that the U.S. will increase its holding of Bitcoin. Like most things, you know, how much, and I'm prepared to be disappointed because it's government, right? So that's my best answer.
All right, yeah. One more, and then I'll finish with my last question.
Go ahead.
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
Good.
My question is about Tether.
Yeah, Chris.
We were just talking about it, and you know, having worked on the short side in equities for 10 years, I know that there's really only one reason that a company will not produce an audit and rather will produce an attestation. And you and I both know why that is.
Yep.
And so it's just, you know, I see, you know, I have exposure to Bitcoin, as you know. I see a room full of people that love the fact that Bitcoin is transparent and, you know.
Chris, I'm right there with you. So first of all, for those of you who don't know, this is Chris Irons. He writes Quote the Raven, which is a fabulous podcast. And
you don't have to clap.
No, it
clap.
is. It
it's
is.
Not that good.
It's really good. I mean, Chris has been on this like a hawk from the beginning, and I'm kind of proud of it actually because he was a skeptic, and rightly so, as many are, of Bitcoin in the early days. And I feel like I've played a role in orange pilling him. I mean, not exclusively, but I think I helped drag him in that direction. To answer your question, Chris, you know how I feel about this. There's very possible that Tether's got fraud in it. I think it's highly likely and possible, but I don't know how we're ever going to deal with it. Do you know what I mean?
I guess the question is like, what do you see as a worst case scenario between you know, say Bitcoin's going to make it for the long run, right?
Right.
Talking about drawdown. Between something like Tether potentially being compromised, and there were reputable reports that they were backing their Bitcoin with like nasty Chinese paper.
Yeah.
Between that and leverage in the system as well too, people 50 to 1, 100 to 1 in crypto, which is very dangerous. So what do you see as a worst case scenario?
Well, you know, Tether could blow up, and whatever coins they have could get liquidated in order to try and keep themselves alive, and you know, Bitcoin could go down 70%. I mean, briefly. Until those coins got absorbed. I can't remember the exact number of coins Tether has as as a percentage of total supply. Somebody probably knows that.
Much less. I mean, a percent of portfolio has gone down. There's a lot of commercial paper. There's treasuries and other things. But,
yeah, but I mean, look, you know, expect the unexpected. And I don't think, if Bitcoin is what we think it is, it would survive a Tether blow-up event. But to think that a Tether blow-up event wouldn't be significant and potentially very painful, I think that's naive. So I'm with you. I mean, I think it's on the possible outcomes. But I mean, my view is, I mean, if somebody wants to blow up Bitcoin and it goes down to 20 or 15 or 50, you know, whatever, I'm like, bring it. You know what I mean? Just bring it. I'm going to figure out which kid I can sell. I've got
sell
one.
Sell a kidney.
I got one.
You're
right
making
over here.
iPhones at Foxconn.
My 23-year-old son is sitting right over here, and I think I could get a pretty good bid for him. So, sorry, Neil. So, but it's a great question, and it is a concern, and it's been a concern of mine since the beginning. Still is. Yeah.
All right. This was awesome. Last question.
Yeah.
We got to get you on Tucker or Rogan. I think we got to make that happen.
I think the odds of it are slim. I don't know. I'm a little edgy. I was with Natalie earlier today, and Natalie spoke to Luke, and Luke Groman just got on Tucker, which is fabulous. But apparently Tucker is not super Bitcoin friendly. Tucker.
Not yet.
Yeah, maybe you. Well, that you may
He'll
right.
get there.
Well, you know,
Rogan likes it, but Rogan doesn't really touch it.
Yeah. So, and let me tell you why. What I learned, he actually is. He's of the theory that it might have been. It's a psyop. He's a very conspiracy theory-oriented guy, and in a lot of cases, he's right. You know, about Kennedy and so many things. But he actually thinks that it might have been, you know, the government that there's a rug pull because this is a government psyop on all of us. Now, having read all of the initial emails and having met Adam Back and, you know, looking at, you know, Len Sassaman and knowing kind of the history of the Bitcoin as I've read it, I think the odds that the government did it are extremely low. I think it was cryptographers through trial and error, you know, proof of work, you know, figuring out all the little pieces got put into place, and then we had the system. But what Natalie told me that Luke told him was that he actually thinks it might be a government psyop, and so for that reason he's skeptical. So we're gonna have to educate him about that. Right?
Roger Ver didn't help going on Tucker either. He basically continued down that path.
Did he go down that path?
Yeah. But my main question was those audiences probably either know your work, or know of Sound Money and Bitcoin much higher percentage than on the other side, right? And if we're talking about this pendulum swim, you know, what platform do you want to go on? Do you think you would be effective at talking to people that are more blue-pilled? And it seems like there's a broader set of that audience that almost needs this more.
Yeah, I don't know. So I sent one. Leslie Stahl interviewed Jamie Dimon on 60 Minutes sometime in the last month or so, and you know, Dimon did his shtick, and Leslie did a good job with it. But at the end of it, she kind of got into wealth inequality, and he really started tap dancing. I mean, he just had no, and you could tell she was getting frustrated and pissed. Like, answer the fucking question, dude. How come, you know, billionaires run in this country and it's just not fair? And he just danced all the way through it. So, you know, the first copy of the book I got, I took a handwritten note. I said, you know, dear Leslie, you know, I saw your interview with, you know, a lot of respect, saw your interview with Dimon, fantastic interview, but I could tell you were really frustrated at the end when he didn't deal with your wealth inequality stuff. This book deals with that issue. You need to have me on 60 Minutes. I sent it to her at 60 Minutes, BlackRock, you know. Will she read it? Will she? I don't know. But somebody like that. I mean, there are few semi-honest journalists still kind of trying to practice the trade. I mean, she's older, and I think she was actually trying to get an honest answer out of him. She couldn't get it. So I would say, you know, Steve Croft. Steve Croft did a really good job. Have you ever seen his interviews with Bernanke? You know, he actually really went after Bernanke, I thought. I think he did a very nice job. So I would say if I had to go into kind of the enemy camp, 60 Minutes would be my first choice. You know what I mean? To try and, you know, just kind of explain what's going on. You know, and I think 60 Minutes is still somewhat credible. I mean, whereas like a CNN's not. You know, so.
Make sure you get a say in the
MSNBC. I'm sorry, saying.
Make sure you get a say in the editing.
Well, yeah, that's right too.
They'll get one of those good ones.
Yeah, they'll figure out.
Yeah, it could be Joy Reid. She might go independent soon. That could be a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, like maybe I should hold up a sign and photobomb somebody. God damn, that's a good idea. The best part of that idea is I might be able to monetize that sign for how much, Christian?
Undisclosed. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Larry. This is awesome. Thank you so much. Everybody grab a book. We're going to be here for a while. Grab a beer, grab a burger, tip your bartenders. We will see you tomorrow with Adam Back. The CIO, I still haven't found that name. CIO of Blockstream. They're separate people, huh?
Sean Bill.
One more time.
Sean Bill.
There we go. And Max's last name starts with a K.
Not Kaiser.
Kai. There we go. From Deribit and Hodl Hodl, also the organizer of the Riga Baltic Honey Badger, one of my favorite conferences in the world.
Debify is the company.
Debify. Thank you. Yeah, we'll stick around. Thanks for coming. Are you using our POS?